Anyway, a 1 is a card that you should never play. A 2 is a card you should do your best not to play. 3 is filler. You'll have them. Don't worry about it. A 4 is a replaceable card. 5 is a card that is strong for what that color is trying to do, what that archetype is trying to do. 6 is a card that you will play when you are in that color. 7 is a card that is worth putting some work into playing. You want to build an engine around it. You want to make it work. 8 is a reason to play a given color. 9 is a card you should always play, period, regardless of color or archetype. 10 is a card that wins the game. And now, Magic cards change a lot with the other things around them. So I also give everything a floor value, the worse a card will be, a ceiling value, the best a card can be, and the amount of effort required to bridge that gap. The effort accounts for things like whether it's a sideboard, whether there's diminishing returns, and all of this is meant to help you choose that card when you are facing it in a booster pack, or decide whether or not that card will make your deck when you are in when you are playing sealed or when you are doing the deck building. So yesterday, I just finished, you can check out the VOD, or you can go on YouTube. We talked about the overall shape of the set, what drafting the set is going to feel like, and how you can take advantage of that. We also covered all of the multicolored cards, which is very important because those are the signpost cards, and all of the white cards. And the white cards are a little bit weak in this set. They are very powerful creatures and bodies, and there's some good removal, but in terms of synergy, they don't do as much as some of the other cards. So I did add a new section here. I'm going to be doing this for each color now. This is the color overview. I should have done it for white too, but I realized it helps a lot to frame each color. So black white in this format, the archetype that they want you to run is black white sacrifice. Blue black is descent, and green black is descend, and those sound very similar, but the difference is that blue black wants you to have a certain number of permanents in the graveyard, and green black you are triggering it each turn. And there are exceptions and overlaps, obviously, because you're trying to get permanents into the graveyard, but they have different ways of doing it. Blue black has a little bit of self-mill. Black itself tends to discard cards and sacrifice them more often. And then green is kind of assembled. There's a lot of different ways to put your cards into the graveyard. Red black also has cards that care about descending, but they are more of a grindy aspect, and it can be a little awkward because sometimes you're going to have to grind down their life total, sometimes you're going to have to grind out their permanents, and it's going to change a lot from game to game. So a few notes about the color. There's no recursive recursion, which is just a phrase that I like to say. So there's nothing like a sanitarium skeleton or the clay revenant from Brothers War, where you can pay mana to return it to your hand. There's no free way to turn the cards in your graveyard into value. There are ways to turn the cards in your graveyard into value, but it's not always going to take a little bit of work. There's a lot of built-in 2-for-1s, cards that are just two weaker cards stapled together, but they are still worth 2 pieces of cardboard. In general, the toughnesses in black tend to be a little bit lower. There's a lot of work attached to the black cards. They're very powerful, but you'll find a lot more medium and high effort values in colors because the cards you place with them matter more, and the cards that the way you play with them matters more. There's a lot of decisions to be made both during the draft and during the games when you are playing black in Lost Caverns of Ixalan. So a few questions that we're going to be asking about each card and in having to do with what each card does for your deck are, do you need to sacrifice cards to make your cards better? And that's, I need to, even crafting cards out of your graveyard in a color that cares about descend is a cost. So maybe you're discarding a card, maybe you're paying some life, maybe you're sacrificing actual creatures. What am I giving up to make this card work? What do I have in the deck that I care about giving up? What do I want to be able to give up? How can I turn these costs into benefits? One of the most common ones you'll see is discarding a card from your hand to pay a cost. Well, if you're discarding a permanent card, you can trigger descend or build towards your descent, and those are pretty valuable. What gets better when you play it again? There's a lot of access to cards in this set in green and black that lets you pick up cards from your graveyard, and some of them will be fine early, and then you'll pick them up late, and they'll win you the game. And then how are you using your graveyard in general? Every color pair and archetype with black cares about using its graveyard. So just pay attention to how you're putting cards in there and then how you are using them once they're there. Okay, so our first card for today, really fascinating one. It is Abyssal Gorestalker. So like, you read this and then you read it again. Like, is it going to be a Barter in Blood? Is it going to be a 6/6 where you sacrifice 2 gnomes to play it? Is it going to be something that you reanimate in order to cheat? So I gave it a 4 with a floor of 2 and a ceiling of 7. It's usually going to play somewhere in the middle of that. And in order to get the most value out of Abyssal Gorestalker, so I like this card because every archetype in black has a way to make this work. So like if you are a blue-black, there's a very good chance that you are just using this like a Barter in Blood. Your opponent sacrifices 2 creatures, and you will have to sacrifice the Gorestalker. You won't have something else in play. If you are black-white, you're very likely to have things to sacrifice. That's where this card really shines. In green-black, you'll pick it up when you need it. But your opponent can mitigate this by just having tokens. White has a lot of extra bodies lying around, and lots of decks incidentally can make bodies, like very specific archetypes. Maybe your opponent's deck doesn't make that, like maybe they're not a white tokens deck, but they have a cavern that makes 3 bats that they're not going to mind sacrificing. This is a really cool card. It's going to play pretty interesting. Yes, Seabeard, that's a really good point, though. If you don't have... if this is your only creature you are going to sacrifice, your opponent sacrifices 2 creatures, that's a solid 2 for 1. Or you can have 3 creatures in play. The thing is, if you manage to set up a situation where you have 2 1/1s and your opponent has 2 real creatures, and you get to trade your 2 1/1 tokens for your opponent's real creatures, you're going to be ecstatic, but you're also probably already winning that game. It's not going to help turn things around. But like, there's control decks where that's not going to happen, and there are decks that can be built to take advantage of this. Cool card, low floor, high ceiling. I haven't seen it yet, Ranger. I have not seen... I don't look at the rares. I mean, I see them. It's inevitable. But like, I don't look at the rares until after I get to play with the set on early access. That's why I won't look at the rares until Thursday, and when I'll review them on Friday. It's going to be fun. All right, up next, Acolyte of Aclazotz. This is another cool card. You may notice it has the same rating, even though very different in floor and a very different ceiling. A 1/4 blocker is just fine often enough. Sometimes you'll be able to grind out your opponent's last few points of damage. It's most at home in a white deck with lots of tokens. This is usually going to feel like filler, but it plays a little bit better than it looks because 4 toughness is a relevant number, and you will have extra artifacts lying around if you need to drain those last few points. It's not an aggressive card, but it has a place even in the more aggressive decks. I gave it a 4, floor of 3, 5. Medium effort, because you do want to try and make sure you have things to eat with it. Exactly, Beard. It's a cool card. Like, it's not busted, but it's just fascinating to play with. I like these elegant designs. All right, Bitter Triumph. Very efficient piece of removal. The floor of that is a 4. That's when you're going to be paying 3 life to kill your opponent's best thing like Infernal Grasp. In some formats, this card would be much worse because 3 life to kill a creature would be a huge cost. In this set, if you're playing the Bitter Triumph at instant speed, you will likely get more than 1 card out of it. And in a pinch, if you're against a very aggressive deck, you won't mind discarding the card so much. It kills any creature at instant speed. That's pretty fantastic. It's good in this set. It's not like in other sets, there's some sets where it'd be a 10, or not a 10. There's some sets where it'd be a 7 or 8, just premier removal. In this set, it's a 6. It's usually going to play near that ceiling of a 6 as a low effort card. Just really try and think about which mode you're playing. Being able to trigger Descend at instant speed is pretty nice, or Descend that you wouldn't otherwise have is pretty cool. It is Beard Broken. This one is an uncommon, and I literally looked through 300 cards before I realized the difference between the commons and uncommons in this set. This one's an uncommon. This one's a common. This one's an uncommon. The trick is these little corners are white on the uncommons. They are uncommons in the corners. That's these That's how I tell. But like honestly, I didn't know a lot of it until I did Search's beard. So for a bit of triumph, this is what we talked about. You're trying to turn those costs into benefits. Like you need the cost of discarding a card to be a benefit to get the most out of this card. It doesn't actually happen that often. But if your opponent is aggressive enough that you can't pay the 3 life, you will be outcarding them anyway. You're going to be a little more okay with discarding a card. And it is hard to be aggressive enough that your opponent is upset about paying the 3 life on Bit of Triumph. Bloodthorn Flail. Not the best way we've seen to grow creatures. The only reason we're gonna revisit this one. The only reason I gave it the ceiling of a 5 is that some decks want to discard cards, and it's kind of tough to power up flyers a lot of the time. It should probably just gonna usually play closer to that floor of a 2. No, but we're gonna but it's a 3 because enough cards value this as a 1 mana artifact that will be there later, and will sack it when they need it. Just the rectangle on this is relevant. It is expensive to equip, but like when you really want to get in for those extra points of damage, you'll pitch a card, and you'll find yourself playing this card occasionally and just being okay pitching the land you drew to get an extra 2 points of damage. Cool card, not very strong. You won't see it too often. I forgot to mention, for some reason, just alphabetically, all of the best black cards are at the end of the alphabet. Blood Rage Mycoid. So this is fantastic because in this set, adds an engine piece at common. So it's best in blue-black or white-black, especially white-black, because white-black is so good at using those fungus tokens. But like blue-black has a lot of ways to just, well, a few ways to just repeatedly mill itself and make a 1/1 every turn. So that floor of a 3, that's if you're not building around it. You need a deck, so like black-green, blue-black, and black-white are all very good at making this card active. Black-red is not quite as good. But if you're just attacking often enough, you'll still get a few extra tokens out of this. You really want 2 or 3 tokens before this is pretty good. A lot of times we'll see a card like this, and it's only good in a very aggressive deck. Excuse me. Because those are the decks that are attacking, trading off their creature resources aggressively. But in this set, the more defensive and mid-range decks are good at using the fungus bodies for various things and better at turning on Descend. So like this is a card your opponent has to answer, or you'll just keep making 1/1s every turn, which is relevant in a lot of the different decks and easier than you would think to make relevant in black itself. Like you can make it relevant without adding a second color. It is Kaiser, but I think it's okay. It lets you open up this design space because like you couldn't make this card if your tokens triggered Descend, because then you'd just be sacking a fungus every turn. And the existence of cards like this Blood Rage Mycoid at common, this is a common, are why cards like this Acolyte of Aclazots are stronger than they would be otherwise. Up next we have Canonize in Blood. This is a weird one. It's something that you kind of want early game, but if you play it early game, I gave it a pretty low score. A 2, floor of 2, ceiling of 5. There's not enough evasion in black to make this card good. You will have fail cases where you run a whole bunch of blue flyers or white flyers, and then this is growing them every turn. There are actually just better ways to grow your flyers. So like, you will have to play this sometimes, but you usually won't be happy about it. The 7 mana 4/3 at the end is okay. Having a 9 mana 4/3 that triggers Descent on your other cards is cool. But there's nothing that cares about counters or enchantments in this set. So like, if it just grew your creature every turn on the end step, it might be playable. It would actually be great if it was automatic. So like, if you are a deck that has cheap flyers and reliably triggers Descend every turn, then this card will be good, but that is a lot more work than you want it to be. If you had a whole bunch of black flyers, then maybe this card would be playable, but you still wouldn't be happy about playing. Like, I will play the Bloodthorn Flail before the Canonize in Blood, unless I am in... So the other way that Canonize in Blood would be good is if you had a very hard control deck that also played early game flyers and triggered descend reliably. That's such a difficult set of circumstances to. Up next, we have Chupacabra Echo. Might be the best black uncommon. Let me check my ratings really quick. Yes, best black uncommon. It just is so easy to make it relevant, and it gets better over the course of the game. So like, Ravenous Chupacabra, this is a throwback to Ravenous Chupacabra from original Ixalan. Yes, exactly, Kaiser. And the original Chupacabra was a 4-mana 2/2 when it comes into play, destroy target creature. This Chupacabra Echo is very similar to destroy target creature, but that extra point of power is hugely relevant, and there is significantly more recursion in this. There are many more ways to return the Chupacabra Echo to your hand or from your graveyard to play than there was in the past in Ixalan. And in the past Ixalan, having some Ravenous Chupacabras was enough reason to pick Raise Dead high. Like, you would play just as many ways to bring it back as you could. You will have situations where you have 3 Raise Dead effects, and then you end up taking the Chupacabra Echo over a powerful rare because it's just that good to keep picking up. Any kind of grindier control deck wants the Echo, but the aggressive decks want the Echo too, because they're going, even if this is only giving a creature -2/-2, it's still a fantastically efficient creature. So yesterday in the it's skin render and is set with 5 Raised Deads. Weird. So yesterday you heard me talking about how removal is a little bit weaker. There's so much more of it. This is the kind of value that this is the kind of removal you pick. You want removal that leaves something behind in this set, or that works well with your other things. Like 4 mana target creature gets -5/-5 is actually not great in this set. But the Chupacabra Echo, it does it itself count towards your descend. It cares about other descents, and you don't even have to play this in a dedicated descend deck to be strong. You're fine if it's just with 3 random permanents, or with a few caves. Up next, we have Deadweight. So Deadweight's actually a full point lower than it would be in other sets, because not as much dies to it as usual. Like, Shock is worse in this set than it's been in a long time, because so many of it doesn't kill all the 2-drops and 3-drops in this set. It kills enough of them that it's still playable and quite strong. And it also triggers Descend. It's a good, snappy way to, like, I'm going to kill a 2-drop. Maybe not your best 2-drop, but a 2-drop and trigger Descend this turn. But it's still good to just shrink a relevant creature for a good attack for only 1 mana. And there's enough card advantage and things to do with your mana that you're very interested in twin spelling. So yes, so it still has a 5, and it's usually going to play near that ceiling of a 5 because you'll have something that cares about Descend. It's weaker than it is in other sets. That doesn't mean it's bad. So still pick it up. All right, next we have a very surprising card. So the Deathcat Marionette. How often have I given a 2-mana 1/1 Death Touch a rating higher than filler? Death Touch is good in this format. So, like, there's no Flick a Coin. There's no Rat Out. There's no random. I mean, there are 1/1 gnomes that trade with the Marionette, but the existence of map tokens lets you grow the Marionette out of range of a 1/1 when you need to. That's actually 2/2 Death Touches are better in this set. However, this card is it is an enabler for all of your Descend things and all the things that Black wants to do in this limited environment, while trading with other 2-drops and killing relevant things. What you'll find a lot with the Black cards and in other colors, but especially with the Black cards, is the payoffs and enablers for so much of what you want to do in this format cost 3 and 4 mana. So having your enabler at 2 mana makes this a very high pick. And the lack of speed in the format and the presence of all of the 2/3s mean that you need your 2-drops to trade with what your opponent is doing on turn 2. But it's really difficult to find 2-drops that do that and feed your strategy. So Deathcat Marionette kind of does it all without being a dead card in the late game when you draw it. Just way better. Like, I love this. This to me the existence of this card and how powerful it is indicative of how cool this format is as a whole. Because like we have a format where a 2-mana 3/1 is great, a 2-mana 2/2 that has a little bit of upside is bad, and this 2-mana 1/1 Death Touch is just fantastic. I gave it a 6. It's a very high rating for a common. Floor of 4, ceiling of 7, and that floor of 4 is if you aren't really doing the descend thing. Death Touchers, cheap Death Touchers are just really good. Yes, so great comparison, Beard Broken. Yes, the May is really important, Ranger, because otherwise you'd be decking yourself a lot. So that's a really good comparison. So Beard Broken compared it to Fang of Shigeki. And the reason Fang of Shigeki was so powerful in Neon Dynasty was twofold. First of all, so Fang of Shigeki is a 1-mana 1/1 Death Touch for green mana in Neon Dynasty, and it is an enchantment creature. And it was very powerful in that set, and there were 3 reasons for that. The first was that you could play, it was a very grindy set. There was not a lot of ways to deal 1 damage. The second is that it was likely to trade with whatever random creature your opponent had, but you could pick it up with your Season of Renewal, which returns 2 cards from your graveyard to your hand. So there are cards that pick up 2 cards in this format, and the ability to pick up a relevant creature for your game plan and a Death Toucher that just trades with whatever they have means that you are just much more likely to get the full value out of your raised deads. It is grindy, Kaiser. It is grindy, but the option for an aggressive build exists, and that is the same as Neon Dynasty. All right, Deep Cavern Bat. This is a cool one. So it's a lot like Kite Sail Freebooter, except there's a slightly fewer ways to kill it. 2-mana 1/1 Flying Lifelink is almost good enough, but being able to pick your opponent's answer for it out of their hand is great. It's particularly good in here because the 2 1-mana spells that kill Deep Cavern Bat in this set are both sorceries, and the other cheap spells that kill Deep Cavern Bat only do it if they are attacking. The Deep Cavern Bat is even better in this set than it would be elsewhere, because looking at your opponent's hand will tell you how they're trying to kill the Deep Cavern Bat. Like if you see some Cosmium Blast and you don't want your opponent to kill the bat because you don't want to give them back another removal spell, just don't attack with it. But the body is relevant in this set. Being able to grow it and attack with a lifelinker in the air is great, and flying is also a little bit better in this set than it is elsewhere. Just throwing it a few maps, races just about everything. Very strong. Yes, so we're going to talk about this more later, Night Dark, but the things that make your opponent discard in this set are bad. The things that make your opponent exile the cards from their hand in this set are very good. I like this one a lot. Yeah, the card's very good. People will scoot. You will have games where your opponent mulligans to 5 or 6, and you play a turn 2 Deep Cavern Bat, and they just concede. Nope. They did not, Ranger, but they have some other ones that are pretty cool. I really like this one. I like that. I like this goblin design. It's like a almost snaky goblin. This is a cool card. It would be actually, so a 3-mana 2/2 Menace is not good enough. 3-mana 3/3 Menace is great. So if you are an aggressive enough deck that you can attack into them, and Black's creatures are incentivized to die. Your opponent is incentivized to kill them. And if you can get this to grow the turn you play it, it's pretty good. If you can't, it's pretty average. It would have a higher rating, but it's not going to be a higher priority than a lot of the 3-drops. It is a payoff for descending every turn at 3 mana. There's lots of good enablers every turn at 3 mana, and that is going to be kind of awkward on your curve. However, it is a common that will go pretty late. So what you want to do is, like, you're not going to first pick it or second pick it or third pick it, but if you find yourself on black at the end of pack 1, count your enablers, count your payoffs. This is a payoff. If you are missing a payoff, we'll talk about another enabler in just a second. But like, if you have 3 of the Deathcap marionettes already, maybe you don't need to take the 4th Deathcap marionette. You can take a Deep Goblin Skull Taker instead. So as you go, keep track of your payoffs for Descend and your enablers for it, and pick this one up if you are short on payoffs. It's pretty good if you can turn it on and you aren't giving up something valuable for it. All right, Defossilize. So this is a really cool one. One thing I want to make very clear, Reanimator is a deck. Reanimator is a deck that you can draft at full power with only commons and uncommons. I don't think that's happened before. I can't think of another time that has happened. We got close with Streets of New Capenna. It can happen in Modern Horizons and the high-powered sets. But yes, you can draft a Reanimator deck. If you aren't a Reanimator deck, the card is playable and kind of bad. Returning another 5-drop to play and putting 2 counters on it is almost worth a card. However, you can play this in the Reanimator deck. You can first pick this and force the Reanimator deck. There is a common and an uncommon reanimation card. And there's land cyclers. So like you can run off-color land cyclers and then defossilize them and explore twice. And you'll be very happy to draw a card and put a counter when you defossilize your creature. So we will revisit this. The base score may need to, the floor is right and the ceiling is right. However, this number might come up depending on how good the Reanimator deck is. And the reason that I'm not sure yet is I don't know what percentage of rares can be reanimated. So this is going to get a revisit based on the rares specifically. Because if you have a few, like if you pick a very strong creature in any given color, it might be worth picking defossilize, pick 2, and then picking the land cyclers aggressively. But having the ability to go mana dork, land cycler, defossilize is great. It's a very cool deck, and I'm glad that it's here. So Kaiser, before the companion change, all companions were viable in draft, and Ikoria was one of the best draft formats of all time. After the companion change, there was nobody fighting for enough of the cycling cards, and cycling just took over the format. But before the companion change, you would have people first pick Aluris and then aggressively take cards like, the reason that there was so much cycling in that set was because if I opened Aluris and took it, I might need to take cycling cards in order to round out my deck with a companion. But after the companion change, it was all cycling all the time. If you open a Zenith Flare, you were supposed to cycle, and it ruined the format. You could also make mutate work, but then you'd still lose sometimes. But yes, you could play any given companion in Ikoria Limited, and it was amazing opening an Obosh and having to pick all the 1-drops like Whisper Squad, or a Garuda and just picking all the even costed cards. Up next, Echo of Dusk. Just pretty efficient. If you are a deck that is good at descending, which means green-black or blue-black, then this is a 5 for you. If you are a white-black deck, it's going to be a 4 for you. And if you are a red-black deck, it's going to be a 3 for you. But it's a reasonable enough 2-drop that you'll just take it. And a 3/3 Lifelinker is powerful enough in the late game that it's not going to feel like a wasted pick. Cards usually replaceable. In some decks is better than others. In some decks is going to be a premier 2-drop. Just make sure you can turn on Descend 4. I gave it a 4. Floor is 3, ceiling's 5. Fanatical Offering. Really cool magic card. You get to, you net a card and a half off Fanatical Offering. So you are sacrificing a treasure or a creature that's about to die. Very good in black-white. You draw 2 cards and you make a map, which a map is usually going to be worth half a card. Because Surveil 1, it either sacrifices to draw a card or surveils 1 and puts a counter on a creature. It's a good card. You're just limited on how many copies you can include in a deck. So like, I won't be taking it too high, because if I have a deck with 5 Fanatical Offerings, because you can just keep eating the maps to keep drawing cards. We're gonna put a revisit on this. I'm gonna stand by this rating. So I gave it diminishing returns. So a lot of the cards, like Village Rites was a really cool card that we see a lot. It's 1 mana, sacrifice a creature, draw 2 cards. Deadly Dispute, 2 mana, sacrifice a creature, draw 2 cards, make a treasure. Those cards usually have diminishing returns, but this one makes a token that you can sacrifice. There are cards that care about things going to your graveyard. Yeah, so 4 is pretty good, and I gave it a ceiling of 6. Usually that ceiling of 6 is going to be that first copy, but we'll see how this plays if I get 6 of them. I might try that on Thursday, see how many Fanatical Offerings I can pick up just to see how it plays, because I don't know, you don't have unlimited time to just keep casting this card, but if you can make it a 2-for-1 more often than not, then I'll bump it up to a 5. Yeah, that's exactly right, Thane. I was saying, it didn't occur to me like that. That's why Deadly Dispute was so powerful, because you could run 5 of them, just keep eating the treasure. But that format was also weirdly slow in a lot of ways. This one is a little bit faster, or is a little bit slower, but you need to be developing your engine faster. So I'm gonna get, the revisit here is correct. I need some more water. I'll just be a sec, and then we'll move on to the Fungal Fortitude. One moment. I agree, Thane. Like, I don't know. We need Dragon Jack here to tell us about what is up with the fungus in this set. Sorry about that. Okay, I'm back. Let's keep going. Okay, up next we have Fungal Fortitude. Pretty cool card. Flash in, and it grows a creature and picks up a creature. So we've seen effects like this. It's a little bit like Not Dead After All, or Fake Your Own Death, and it's going to be rated a little bit like those cards. It is nice that it is a permanent that goes to the graveyard, and it's a reasonable trick. There's just like, it plays like other tricks. It's a little more proactive. I'm raising the score on this card. I'm gonna be playing with it kind of a lot. We'll leave it at a 3 for now. Because like you can't run too many of this. You're not going to be picking it very high, and you need cards that work with it. You need cards that pick up. But that +2 power, like just having a flyer, so it's like Not Dead After All, but you get the power up front. You don't have to wait for the creature to die, and you can play it proactively. And we're raising the score. The fact that you can play this proactively to just make your creature attack better, like make your flyer attack better, like you can put it on a deep cavern bat. Now you've got a 3/1 lifelinker. When your opponent dies, you get to take a fresh card from them. It just blinks it. There's so many of the black creatures that Fungal Fortitude works really well with, which normally we see, like cards like Fake Your Own Death or Not Dead After All. We see a lot of those cards working really well in specific situations, but then you'll have other situations where it's just stuck in your hand and you don't get the opportunity to get the Wicked roll onto your creature or make your treasure. But Fungal Fortitude, you can always play just to attack, which I like that a lot. Up next are Gargantuan Leash. Yes, exactly, March. Being proactive on that. Like, I was only thinking, when I first evaluated this card, I was only looking at it as a reactive spell. But it doesn't have to be a reactive spell. If your opponent is tapped out, then you can just play this to attack, and it's going to be a relevant way to grow your creature that makes it a lot harder to kill. And, like, I say that there's 6 disenchants in this set. There aren't 6 disenchants in this set. There are 6 shatters in this. But there's not a lot of ways to just stop this. I think this is a lot better than it was on my first reading. Gargantuan Leech. This is a Caves payoff. It is a very good Caves payoff. Like, this has to be 6 mana or less to be good. But you can get it down even cheaper. And then you will have situations like in the Cave deck where you are able to, maybe this takes a whole turn, a whole 5 mana to play your 5/5 lifelink, and then later in the game you get to raise dead it and play this in the same turn, also picking up another threat. So hugely powerful payoff for the caves deck. You can play it with fewer caves, but I wouldn't run it with fewer than 4 or 5 caves. And if you have those, it's great. It's a great card if you have enough caves. So high effort value, average 4 because it is very powerful, with a floor of 2 if you have 0 caves, and then it climbs towards that 6 the more caves you have. But it's just a brick wall for aggro decks. Cool card. Grasping Shadows. This one is fascinating. So I gave it a rating of 6 with a floor of 3 and a ceiling of 7. It's usually going to play pretty close to that ceiling. The way this is likely to play out is you enable 3 attacks, then draw 3 cards. You will have the life to pay to draw the cards as a result of the 3 attacks, but like you have to have creatures. You want to curve out into the Grasping Shadows, and if you draw it off the top of your library in the late game, you are happy if it enables any attacks. It's better than in a lot of sets because it breaks. There's more likely to be board stalls in this set that you have to break through. But getting 3 attacks in, gaining a bit of life, and then drawing 3 cards is really cool. It is good, Beard Broken. Like if I were to present up front, hey, do you want to pay 7 mana to gain 4 life and draw 3 cards, you'd probably say no. But it's so spread out, and you get a land afterwards, and then it's a cave. Like if you top deck this in the late game with anything on your board, you're gonna be happy. And if you top deck this in the late game to an empty board, you were gonna lose that game anyway. Very cool card. This is the kind of thing we want enabling our attacks in. I like this one. Yes, every single card in the set, March, is either has every transforming card in the set either crafts or transforms into a cave. Very good design standpoint. But like cards like this Leech, it's going to be difficult to find enough actual caves, but so many of the cards in the caves decks have caves on the backside. It's really well designed. Yeah, there's at least 3 uncommons that transform into caves, and I know there's a few rares, but I didn't count them. Greedy Freebooter. First when I read this card, I thought it said draw a card and create a treasure token, and I am like, this is busted in half. Nope, it's just the 1 mana 1/1, something that you're not too upset about sacrificing. The reason that it's got a 3 is like the treasure is relevant. Your opponent's not going to want to kill it if they think you're going to ramp, and then it sets up something you want to ramp into, but it's not something you're happy to play outside of black-white. It's very good in black-white, and it's reasonable in a black-red deck, because black-red is surprisingly grindy in this format. It's less aggressive than you would guess. You will often be trying to splash power cards in your black-red deck off of treasures. So great in black-white, okay in black-red, reasonable elsewhere. Like just having 2 things to sacrifice from your 1-drop is nice. All right. And the pirate typings are relevant. So I gave it a 3, and it's usually going to play at that floor of a 3. But with the right cards around it, you can get up to that ceiling of a 5. I should probably I'm going to drop the effort on it a little bit, but I'm keeping the ratings otherwise. Join the Dead. It's funny, like in other sets, this would have been top tier, grade 7 removal spell. But removal is just so plentiful in this format. Like we've seen so many good common removal spells already. We're only 2 colors in. So many good common removal spells. It's still something you'll play. It's something you'll be happy to play. It's kind of cool because I gave this a very similar, did I give this the same rating as Deadweight? I didn't do that on purpose. But I did exactly the same everything as Deadweight. The downside is that it doesn't trigger your descend, and I would advise against having more than 2 or 3 cards that don't count towards descend in your descend deck. But it is a payoff for descend, and killing anything is nice. You want a few cards that kill anything. If your opponent has something that doesn't die to the -10/-10 in the late game, you lose anyway. That just matters like that in this format. But it's very difficult to do, so I wouldn't worry too much. And dealing with indestructible things is nice. Like, it's just good efficient removal. I gave it a 5. Take it when you need removal. Don't take it over a bomb. It's not quite a candy grapple because you can't splash this. You have to be base black. There's not as much splashing in general, but just good, efficient instant speed removal. Malicious Eclipse. So this is a cool card. It kills about half the creatures in the set. It's usually going to play like that 4, and you'll usually get a kill out of it. What's more relevant is the Exile. Exiling your opponent, if your opponent has 3 2/2s in play and you kill them, and then your opponent plays a Descend 4 card, you're going to be upset. But killing opponent's 3 2/2s is still pretty valuable. This is a solid uncommon sweeper. The Exile is more relevant in this set than in others. The -2/-2 is less relevant in this set than others because there's so many 2-drops that this doesn't kill, and even there's even 1-drops, so your opponents will be able to grow outside of this size. So the effort here isn't in how you build your deck, it's in how you play your game. This card is going to be difficult to play with and against, and I'm pretty happy about that. I love a good sweeper to uncommon. I gave it a 4 with a floor of 4. It's usually going to play at that floor of a 4. Do your best not to kill your own creatures with it. And a high effort value and a ceiling of 7. If you can get, like, there are enough 2-mana 2/3s in this format that you can build your deck to have mostly 2-mana 2/3s. It's also a fantastic sideboard card against like a gnome deck. Doesn't do a lot against an eclipse deck. Explore deck, sorry. I was looking at the word eclipse. Cool card. Mephitic Draught, very good card in the artifact deck, pretty bad everywhere else, but you can make it work in black alone. There are enough ways to sacrifice it in black alone, as long as you pick them pretty aggressively. This card makes the Aclazots a lot better. You really want to be getting more than 2 cards out of this, because 2 cards, and so at its face value, if you sacrifice this, it is worth 2 cards. But there are enough cards that get value out of sacrificing an artifact that you can often get 2.5 cards out of this, which you really want to do because you are paying some life to draw these cards. It's going to be a really great way. Black-white struggles a little bit to draw cards to dig through the deck. They're great at scrying and getting the right card to the top. But there's nothing like an Intrepid Overseer that just always cantrips. But there are also ways to pick this up from your graveyard once it's there. This is a fantastic way for black-white to keep cards flowing, but a lot of the other archetypes don't just have better ways to make cards flow. We'll talk a lot about that when we get to blue. Yes, it is, Beard. All right, there are 6 ways to sacrifice it in common and uncommon. 6 good ways. Up next, we've got Primordial Gnar. Really cool showcase of the Discover mechanic. It's a 5-mana 5/2. It will usually trade with a 2/2 or a 3/3 and then draw you a card, and that's fine. It's not really like your aggro deck doesn't curve out into this, but if your deck is recurring a lot of cards for value, the Gnar gets a lot better. There's 3 different cards that the Gnar can discover that returns it to your hand right there. But you have to have good removal. Like if you have a big pile of dead weights, this card gets a lot better because you get to take out all of the cheap things that it would trade with. And it's really good in a control deck because it tends to be worth 2 cards. But overall, it's going to feel like filler most of the time. 5 is a lot in this format. There's a lot of good 5-drops. Gave it a 3 with a floor of 3 and a ceiling of 5. Rampaging Spiketail, a great card. You can reanimate it. It's a 6-mana 5/6, which is a little bit below rate. But Swamp Cycling is just good in this format, triggering Descend at instant speed, growing your Descend with what would otherwise be a basic land. 2 is a little bit high for Swamp Cycling, but it's a good body. And there's a lot of ways to use good bodies in this form. I gave it a 5. It's usually going to play like a 5. You can get it up to a 6 in the Reanimate deck. But like, yeah, take it if you're black. Like I'll probably play 2 to 3 of these if I'm a black deck. And 2 to 3 of them if I'm just splashing black. Ray of Ruin, efficient removal, 5 mana. It's not very efficient removal, it's removal. And killing the non-basic land and vehicle is relevant because they can be tough to kill otherwise. But overall, just average. The Exile is nice. But yeah, you'll take it. Don't take too many. Think of it like Shatter the Oath in the last set. You need ways to deal with big creatures. You need removal. You don't have to take it that high. Yeah, the non-basic land is actually relevant in this set thing, which I really like. Screaming Phantom. So this is a really cool enabler for Descent. And flying is difficult to come by. Windrake is good again. Windrake hasn't been good for a long time. I don't know if everybody noticed that, but like that was pretty sad for a lot of older Magic players. 3 mana 2/2 flyer is good in this set. A 3 mana 2/2 flyer that mills you a card every attack is a little bit better. The 3s are just clogged for synergy, so you're not going to be taking it that highly, but don't be upset when you have to play it. Floor of 4, usually going to play that floor of a 4 is pretty good. Ceiling of 5 in the true Descend deck, the ones that care about triggering it every turn. Solid card, nothing too crazy. Skullcap Snail, I think this is the best common in the set. I thought about it a lot. Your opponent is very likely to have cards. There's a lot of good ways to draw cards. This card itself is very likely to come back. You can recur until your opponent's out of cards. In the black-white deck, you tend to sacrifice it. We have seen Ravenous Rats, 2 mana, 1/1, your opponent's discarded card, be very good or very bad in a lot of sets, without a lot of in between. And the difference between like Virus Beetle is the ability to recur it and make the body relevant in other ways. Well, this is a set where we can recur it and make the body relevant in other ways. I anticipate this card to be being very strong. Like, yeah, it is just the exile is also relevant. Your opponent you'll have decks with 3 of these, and your opponent will be trying so hard to assemble an engine, and you just make them exile every piece from your hand or a key piece. Exile is a significant upgrade in this set specifically. Good card all around. That's common. So we are at the beginning of a string of very, very good. Up next, Soul Coil Viper. This is another reanimation spell. I thought it was a common. I just found out it wasn't. It is a reanimation spell on a 2/3. It is a reanimation spell that doesn't sit stuck in your hand when you don't have quite enough graveyard. Ways to put cards in your graveyard. It is a reanimation spell that blanks your opponent's removal. It does not say like you can bring back any creature. You don't have to bring back an 8 mana spell to make the card good. Just efficient all around. So I gave it a 4 floor, ceiling 7, average score of 6 with medium effort. It's just not that hard to cram a few land cyclers into your deck and reanimate something huge with this. And there's no like cremate. There's no way to instantly exile cards from your graveyard once you activate this. Like if you get to untap with this and you hold priority, if you have priority and activate this, your opponent cannot interrupt it in this set at common or uncommon. Yeah, Ranger. So the trick is these white symbols, but like it took hundreds of cards for me to figure that out. Like the white corners on the compass. But yeah, I keep thinking things are common or uncommon. That was the first snail thing. All right, up next we've got Singing Cave Crawler, another fantastic uncommon. 3 mana, 1/3 with Death Touch. We talked a few times about how good 1/1s with Death Touch are. Well, a 1/3 with Death Touch in this set is much better. There are a lot of 1/3s and 2/3s that this just eats, that can't block this card. You really have to get it to descend, but it is not that hard to get it to descend in the right deck. Drawing a card every turn, fantastic. I thought it was Ranger. I'm working on it. I'm getting better at it. Yeah. But yes, this card is very good in this set. 1/3 Death Touch, relevant body, descend 4, not that hard. Drawing a card every turn is fantastic. And it's like Phyrexian Arena, but when your life total is low enough that you can't pay the life to draw a card, you just leave it back to block. I would take this card over Phyrexian Arena. Opportunity. I gave it a 6 with a 4 or 5 and a ceiling of 7. And like it's just so likely to attack, draw you a card, and then trade with one of your opponent's cards and just be a 2-for-1 inherently. Synapse Necromage. Sorry, it took me a few tries. I got it. It's a wizard. It's a fungus wizard that dies and makes 2 fungus. What a card. It's just very likely to trade up. It'll trade with your opponent's 2/2 or 3/3 and then leave 2 1/1 fungus behind. And you really want that to happen in every color combination in this set. We talked a little bit yesterday in white about how good getting 3 rectangles from 1 card is for 3 mana in this set is, and this is no different. It's just hard to exile it. If they exile it, then you're in trouble, but it's still fine. Just very efficient 3-drop. I gave it a 6, floor of 5, ceiling of 7, medium effort. Just changes a little bit based on the deck it's in. Cool card. All right, this is a very interesting one. Black's common craft card is Tithing Blade. ETB, each opponent sacrifices a creature, and you can turn it into a drain 1 every turn. So neither half of this is particularly exciting, but the fact that it stays in play and is a relevant artifact for all of your artifact strategies, and a relevant permanent for all of your permanent strategies, and a spell effect that is a permanent for Descend, just does everything reasonably well. There are going to be enough board stalls in this set. So like the reason that I gave it a 5, pretty high. That's because with this card, the times when it's bad are when there is a board stall or your opponent is making a bunch of units. The times when Tithing Blade, but then those are also times when Consuming Sepulcher is very good. So like these two cards together are pretty nice. This is a card you'll side out sometimes. The only problem with this card is that there's some decks where the whole of the card is useless. But they aren't going to happen that often. Just be prepared to side it out against like opposing black-white decks or white-blue decks. Actually, really just all white decks really just laugh at this card. White is good at gaining life in this set and good at generating a lot of extra bodies. So it's the opposite of a color hoser. But like you can still find the time to play it, and it combos with Malicious Affliction and Deadweights to make sure that you kill something a little bit better. Cool card. I really like this one. Right, Beard. Although, we'll see what that limit is. I'm excited to find out what that limit is. Visage of Dread. Now, this is a really good one. So you do discard it. Like, you do make your opponent discard the card as opposed to the other ones where they exiled. This is what they have instead of Mind Rot. So we've seen Pilfer be playable. Like we have seen choose a card from your opponent's hand for 2 mana and they discard it, be good enough in a set. Well, this one stays behind and is a relevant permanent for crafting or Descend or sacrificing to all the different effects. And then it turns into a 6 mana 5/4 with Menace. And if you build your deck right, it's just 6 mana to become the 5/4 after it just makes them discard a card. Because it mills 2 cards. So you have to pull 2 creatures out of your graveyard, but then you get to immediately replace them when you mill 2 cards for the purposes of Descend. This is a reason to be black most of the time. I gave it a 6 with a floor of 5, a ceiling of 7. I may even come back and raise the value of this card. Yeah, just taking an artifact or creature from it is pretty nice. The reason that I was a little careful with it is that there could be decks. There are decks where you'll miss, but there's not going to be very many decks. Like you'll be happy to play this against dinosaurs or pirates. You'll be happy to play this against white-blue artifacts. Just very strong in general. Foxy! Hey, Foxy. We are doing our set review right now, which just means that I will be answering questions only after each card. Heck yeah, Foxy. Would you mind sending me a DM for that? Because I don't have access to the spreadsheet at this moment. And I want to make sure I remember. Thank you. Really appreciate the redeem. All right, up next we have Vito's Inquisitor. This is a 4 mana 3/3. You have to feed it something before it's worth it. But it's instant speed, which makes it hard to abrade and hard to burn. And a good win con for the black-white sack deck. Just giving it Menace, and then your opponent has to, like, if you have a 3/3 with Menace, or a 4/4 with Menace, because it will be the first time you activate it, your opponent always wants, when you have a 4/4 with Menace, your opponent always wants to block with the fewest creatures possible to kill your creature. Because it's a huge risk. That's what Menace does to the opponent. It imposes risk. So, if I have a 4/4 and you have 2 2/2s, and my 4/4 has Menace, you have to block with your 2 2/2s to stop it. Well, then I have the potential of 2-for-1ing you with an Abrade by just killing one of the creatures. Vito's Inquisitor gets to make your opponent risk more to block it. Because if your opponent has a 2/2, a 2/2, a 3/3, and a 3/3, and you attack with your 4/4 Menace, they can't block with the 2 2/2s because you can just feed it a card. They have to block with the 3/3 and the 2/2. Because they have to make you sacrifice at least 2 more permanents before it's worth risking those 2 cards, which means that your removal spell could potentially do a lot more. So I like this card a lot, even though Its vanilla form is not great. A 4-mana 3/3 is not what you want to be doing in this format usually, but just treat it as a 5 or 6 drop and you'll be pretty happy. It is a black-white card specifically. It's going to be at that floor of a 3 if you don't have good things to eat with it. But even just in black, there are good cards to eat with it, like the Necromage. And also, all sack outlets are inherently a little bit better for triggering. Very cool. I know, March, like, I read this card at first thing and I put the activate only as a sorcery at the end of it and thought, oh, another one of these? Nah. Like, I think people are going to start out misevaluating this card and all of the sacrifice cards because they've gotten so used to having activate only as a sorcery at the bottom. Like, it's just part of it is ingrained in them to have activate only as a sorcery at the bottom. But no, that doesn't happen in this set, which means we're back to threat of activation being something valuable. The threat of activation on Vito's Inquisitor is almost as valuable as the activation. Just a great card. Drinking way too much water. All right, so that's going to be it for black cards. We will be right back with blue. See you in a minute. Okay, I'm back. Hi. Okay, let's move on to blue. Blue is interesting in this set. So in Wilds of Eldraine, blue is the weakest color. And that's not because the cards in blue were bad. It's because the cards in blue were the least flexible. Well, in Lost Caverns of Ixalan, it's the opposite. The cards in general are a little weaker than in other colors, but they are all more flexible and fit into more decks and more strategies. So like blue rares should inherently be a little bit stronger than other rares because it is easier to slot blue into any given strategy. So the blue-white color combination is artifacts. Pretty straightforward. You just pick up some artifacts, and we've seen already how good the crafting artifacts can be, how good they are to just sit there and be relevant to your strategy until the late game. The red-blue strategy is pirates. That one's a little bit tougher to assemble because you need A, pirates, B, artifacts to feature pirates, and C, ways to use the artifacts that pirates generate. So maps are very easy to use, but treasures you're going to want to put some work into. Blue-black is Descend. Blue-black Descend and Descent is very good. Blue has very good enablers, but not a lot of good payoffs, but we saw some great payoffs over in black. And green-blue is Explore. That means map tokens and caring literally about the keyword Explore. Green has a lot more cards that say, do a thing when you explore. Well, they have one more. Blue has more cards that actually explore, as well as creatures that really benefit from the +1/+1 counters when you don't hit a land. So the cards are pretty flexible. The synergy isn't there as much, like there's not as many engines in. The counter spells are really good in this set. Like the actual just counter target spell cards are very good. And I think that is intentional because Instants and sorceries are all a little bit worse in this set because they don't go with your descent. Like if you have a card that says mill a card, you really want to make sure that milling a card triggers descend every single time. But all of the cards in blue are pretty consistently fine and are less effort. So you're going to see a lot more low ratings, a lot more medium rating, and then a lot more mid scores. That's okay. Blue is very likely to fill in the gaps that you are missing in your draft deck. So when you are drafting blue, the questions you need to ask as you are drafting and building are, where is your card advantage coming from? So there's lots of really strict ways to just draw 2 cards, draw 3 cards, and discard a card. But there are better ways to get card advantage in other colors. Craft is a really good example of that. Like you can pay 6 mana to draw 3 cards, or you can pay 6 mana to put a 5/4 into play. And situationally, one will be better than the other. Which game stage will you try to get your cards back from? So like if you have lots of cheap spells that you are trading off, or occasional 2-for-1s that you have to 2-for-1 yourself to deal with a threat, which you will in blue occasionally, you have to take that card advantage back somewhere. That can be through tempo, just attacking through your opponent's threats without them being able to interact, or literally drawing them. And it's okay if you're not sure exactly how you're going to do that, but it's important that you know when you're going to do it. Because if you time it wrong and your opponent and miss of countering your opponent's key card, or miss your opponent crafting a threat that gets you attack right away, then you're going to be in trouble. How are you using your evasive creatures? Are you growing them? Are you deploying a lot of them because they're cheap? Or are you equipping them? How are you using your rectangles? Are you going to be sacrificing them to specific things? Map tokens are a really good example of, are you going to be using this to tap 2 artifacts to pay for something? Are you going to be using them to craft? Are you using them to generate card advantage by scrying lands to the top? Or are you using them to grow your evasive creatures? And there's a lot of ability to dig in this set, especially in blue, but in all the colors really. If you have a bomb that you're digging for, you can mill yourself and recur it to your hand. You can scry a whole bunch by attacking. You can keep using maps to dig for it. But you got to know what you're digging for. And it's okay if the answer is more creatures. Maybe you have a big pile of evasive threats and you need to pick up 5 of them in order to win the game. Maybe you have a specific bomb that wins you the game and that's what you need to find. Or maybe you have an engine, a combination of specific cards that generate a lot of value or damage over time. But when you draft and when you build, though, like if you're digging for more cards that dig for cards, you're going to lose. And you see this a lot in formats with board stalls or in formats with very grindy things. Actually, we were just talking about Ikoria. So in Ikoria, you'd have people all the time complaining, why am I drawing so many lands in the cycling deck? And the answer is because if you have a card, if you have 5 cards with cycling, and you cycle for a cycler, cycle for a cycler, cycle for a cycler, cycle for a cycler, all of those cards are inevitably lands. You have to make sure that your cards aren't inevitably lands. You can do that, Ranger. Definitely you can do that on Arena. Yes. But make sure your cards aren't inevitably lands. Let's put it on a t-shirt. Alright, up first we have Ancestral Reminiscence. It is strict card advantage. Discarding the card feeds Descend, but overall this is not the card advantage you want. Sorcery speed is a huge liability in blue in general. I'm actually more likely to splash this card. If I'm a green-black deck and I have a good blue rare that I'm splashing for, I might put in an Ancestral Reminiscence. But blue doesn't need to play this card. Blue has better versions of this card. If you get to pack 3 and you realize you have no better version of this card, like our next one, which we'll talk about in just our next 2 cards from now, like that we'll talk about in just a minute, go ahead and play one. But like your turn 4 is a little too important to spend it on drawing 2 cards, even if you're triggering Descent. I gave it a 2 with a floor of 2. It's usually going to play at that floor of a 2, but you can pick it higher if you need it, and it'll play at that ceiling of a 4. But you don't want to have to, so the effort's pretty high. Brackish Blunder. I like this card. Return a creature to its owner's hand. It's creature only. And you really need the map token. This card is bad if you're not making the map token, but you can attack and protect your own creature through an attack. That's not how you want to use this, but it's not the worst thing. The thing that will tell you whether this is a 3 or a 4 in your deck, a 4 of 3, ceiling of 4, is how well can you use this map. And there is a tempo-oriented deck that deploys cheap flyers and uses maps to make them into real threats, where this card is pretty good. Because just bouncing your, like, if your opponent plays a 6/6, that draws them 3 cards, and then you put it back in their hand, it's okay that it draws them another 3 cards if that map lets you kill them before those cards are relevant. So, yeah, tempo-oriented deck, overall fine. Not something you want to play. I gave it a 3, but, like, you're not going to be too upset with a copy or 2. So Ranger, you can do that on Arena as opposed to in real life, because Arena gives you the hand with more lands and you only need 1 land. So you essentially have twice as many mulligans, and that deck can mulligan a few times without it not working. Like cycling so good in Ikoria. Chorus. This is the card draw you want. It is significantly better than the other one, because if you have to trigger, this is great because if you have to trigger Descent, it is likely going to be for a combat. If you don't have to trigger Descent, then take your attack and accept the 2 for 1. And I just realized that this is an uncommon. I really thought this was a common in this set, and I was excited about it. But solid card. Like, this is a reprint. It used to have a raid, discard a card if you didn't attack, but it doesn't need raid to function the same way. It's a cool card. Pick it pretty high. Don't pick too many. Don't make sure that you try to, if you try to course and draw 2 try to course in your blue tempo deck, you're upset. Very good though. Yeah, I love this card. I mean, you're charting a course, you're using maps, it's great. I love this card. Up next, Cogwork Wrestler. So I had to not rate this card and then go look at every other card in the set and come back. Solid card. It's easier to play with than you'd think. It's a 1/2 is relevant. Blocking the 1/1s, trading with cards is relevant. There's enough. Like, this trades with a 3/1. So a card like this is better the more 3/1s there are in this set, because you get to shrink the 3/1 and block it. It wins a few random combats, and getting an artifact into play at the right time is relevant. Then you can craft it a little bit later. It's got kind of diminishing returns. You don't want too many of them. Although playing 2 of them when your opponent attacks is going to be really funny. Your opponent is going to attack you with a 4/2, and you get to play 2 Cogwork Wrestlers and double block it. Or that 5/2 for 5 gets blocked by 2 Cogwork Wrestlers. And I just love the image of this little gnome these 2 little gnomes double teaming a huge monster. Anyway, we have a very timely Golett here in the Pokemon. So if you want a Cogwork Wrestler of your own, go ahead and grab this Golett in the Pokemon game. It looks like Golett, doesn't it? Hang on, I gotta pull up a picture of Golett really quick. So the Golett that just popped up looks like this. This is what just appeared in the Pokemon game. See? Cogwork Wrestler. Perfect. Indistinguishable. I like Golett. It's a cute Pokemon. Anyway, it's good in the artifact deck and okay everywhere else. It should probably be at a 3, but I've got a soft spot for it. That doesn't mean I shouldn't change it. Confounding Riddle. Just very efficient, especially because you want to be holding mana up so often in this set. That's another reason that the Cogwork Wrestler is good, is holding up mana is just something that will happen often in this set. Ooh, what is the flavor text on it? Years of adventure and adversity on the open seas did not prepare Brog for the humiliation of losing a sparring match to a Cogwork doll less than half his size. Yep. But Confounding Riddle, just very good. So in Eldraine, I would often say, well, Quick Study and Ice Out make each other better, because then if you have them both in your hand, then you can end, if your opponent doesn't play a spell because they don't want you to be able to use your mana efficiently, well, then you get to cast an instant and draw 2 cards. Confounding Riddle is that principle in 1 card. So either you get to hold up mana on turn 5 or 6, and your opponent might say on turn 3, like if, well, that's a bad example. On turn 3, if your opponent says, you have a counterspell, I'm not going to play my spell in order to avoid letting you use your mana efficiently this turn, you still get to use your mana efficiently that turn. It removes the drawback that most counterspells have, making it a very strong counterspell. I think it's allowed to be better just because it doesn't trigger Descend, but really good in this set specifically. I gave it a 5. It's usually going to play near that ceiling of a 5 with a floor of 4 and an effort that is low. You'll find that the effort in general is lower on the blue cards in this. Council of Echoes. Very cool 6 mana flyer. You have to trigger Descend, but even if you're not a Descend deck, you are very likely to have Descend active on turn 6 when you play this card. Yeah. It does. It puts the rest into your graveyard. You're absolutely right, Ranger. I was looking at, because Supreme Will, the card this card is based on, does not. Doesn't change the rating though. Council of Echoes. So this would have a higher rating in other sets, but 6 mana finishers are not hard to come by in blue. There's a lot of 6 mana finishers. So it's pretty good. The tempo is nice. You're limited on it like you are in any draft format. You are limited on how many 6 mana spells you can cast. But it's a very good one, and you have a few good options. Blue is really good at tempo and card advantage in the late game. It struggles early. Yep, it is one more on both, Ranger. Supreme Will is counter target spell unless the controller pays 3, and look at the top 3 cards of your library and put the other on the bottom of your library. So it's better on all 3 counts. Council of Echoes, I gave it a floor of 3, ceiling of 5, medium effort, because you do want to trigger the Descend, but more importantly, you have to play it at the right time. Didact Echo. This one is a little... I mean, a 5 mana 3/2 that draws a card is just something you're interested in most of the time. You can't play too many. If you can consistently give it flying, it's a lot better. It's not like this is just a 2-for-1. This card is worth 2 cards and is a finisher in and of itself. Solid all around. But you need to be a slower deck. You want to be a more controlling or mid-range deck for Didact Echo to do what you want it to do. It's tough to cast this and hold up mana for a counterspell in blue, so you don't have to worry too much about it. Like you can just jam it, draw the card, counter the spell later. But solid card in general with diminishing returns. I gave it a 4. It's usually going to play like that 4, ceiling of 5. It'll feel pretty good to play. You just don't have to pick it that high, because this goes back to the question of where is your card advantage coming from? It could be coming from a pile of Didact Echo. It could be coming from spells that draw you cards. Just keep track of where your card advantage is coming from, and if you're short on it, take some Echoes. Eaten by Piranhas. I came up on this card a lot. I gave it a floor of 3 with a ceiling of 6, and then I ended up settling on a 5 for it because there's so many things you just don't really want to kill in this set. So like, I mean, even just looking at just the last color that we saw, dealing with your opponent's Singing Cave Crawler in a way that they can't bring it back right away, stopping the Necromage from making 2 1/1s. It keeps the finance, like, this card has been bad in the past because it leaves your opponent with a body that is relevant. But it answers enough that I'm okay with it, and having Flash is very powerful in this. I also just like removal that is a permanent. So it's not free to play with, but it's better than it has been in the past. Frilled Caveworm. Card's fine. You're going to play it when you have to. 4 mana 2/5 is actually not unplayable. 4 mana 4/5 is kind of great. 4 mana 4/5 is kind of great. We're raising the ceiling and raising the effort on this card, but leaving the same score. Yeah. All right. So like you have to trigger Descend, you have to be in need of a 4-drop, but a 4/5 and a 2/5 are both great blockers, and the ability to turn into a blocker later is pretty nice. Hermetic Nautilus. This is the 2-drop that blue wants. It is a 1/4 that attacks every turn, and your opponent is going to be a little scared to block it because it trades up hard later. It'll trade with... Like, it's a 4-1 when you need it to be, with no risk of accidentally trading with your opponent's 1-1. This is the 2-drop that you want in blue in order to hold the ground while you deal with everything else, because you really want a good 2-drop to make your counter spells all a little bit better, and it attacks and uses the mana really well. I like it a lot. Yeah, the Nautilus, I think it's really good. If you can grow it, if you can give it a few extra points of toughness, specifically 3 extra points of toughness, you can activate it 2 times. Makes it a lot better. Just solid card without being... It's pretty good. It's one of the blue's best 2-drop. Right. And the vigilance on a 1/4 is just so obnoxious. It just attacks every single turn. Pretty good. I gave it a 6, floor of 5, ceiling of 7. But like, I'll be very happy to take as many of these as I can in my blue decks. Hurl into history. So this card looks good on the surface. One thing that I haven't talked about yet, Discover X is not better than Discover 3. Discover 4 is not better than Discover 3. Like, not inherently. Like, you can hit a 4-drop card, but like, it's not until you reveal a spell with mana cost X. It's mana value X or less, which means in a way, all 1-drops and 2-drops are a little bit worse because of triggering for your discover. So how this card actually reads is dismiss for 5 mana. It's counter target spell, draw a card. Don't be fooled by the Discover X. Now that's not bad. The counter target spell, Discover X, is something that controlled X once. It's a really solid piece of card advantage. But what we have here is a set and color filled with 5 mana 2-for-1. Like, we have a lot of ways to just generate a little extra value on our cards. There's a lot of cards that draw cards when they come in. This is a solid card without being an amazing card. If it could counter any spell, I like it a lot more. But only countering artifacts or creatures is a little odd. And the thing is, so many of what you are... So many of the cards you are dealing with in this format that your opponent is putting 6 mana into aren't 6-drops. They are craftable cards that have been in play for 3 turns already. So in a conventional format, you would have a game like it's a general game plan where you go 2-drop, 3-drop, 4-drop, hold up counter spells for the rest of the game. That game plan isn't as good in this format because if you go 2-drop, 3-drop, 4-drop, hold up counter spells for the rest of the game, the card your opponent is planning to win the game with is likely already in play. That doesn't mean it's bad. It just means it's not as good as 5 mana counter target spell draw a card usually would be. So if you're a controlling deck, if you have bounce spells, if you need the card advantage, it's still solid. But I gave it a floor of 3. It's usually going to play like that 3. And the more you need 2-for-1s, the more you need card advantage, the better it will be. I'll side this in a lot. I will sideboard this in against so many slower, grindier decks. But I'm not going to main deck it too often unless I'm a hard control deck. That's right, March. Like, it's just cool. I think this design is so good because like it is not a fantastic Magic card. It's a fine, okay Magic card. So Beard, one of the reasons I gave this Hermetic Nautilus such a high rating, those don't exist. Like the small fast damage removal spells, 1 mana deal 1 or give 1 mana give a creature -1/-1, not in this set. There is 2 mana deal 4 damage. There is 2 mana destroy target artifact or deal 3 damage. But all of those cards already kill the Nautilus and cards that are similar to it. Gawk is not in this format, Beard. Wait, is it? Hang on. There is a deal 2 plus dinosaurs, but I don't think it's an instant. One sec. I just realized that it might be an instant. All right, text deal 2 and set. Caverns of Ixalan. Dreadmaw's Ire? No. There's 1 mana deal 2 damage, but it is sorcery. See? So yes, there is no shock in this set. This one is a good card, but like, yeah, I went through and made sure that nothing could kill this at instant speed for less than it would kill other things. So there are things that kill this at instant speed, but not things that kill this at instant speed after the activation. I also like, this is never gonna happen with an Nautilus, but it's gonna be really funny if it does. If your opponent tries to exile it to stop Descend from happening, you can pay 4 mana and trigger Descend on your own. Like, I love those visual traps. You can activate this twice to trigger Descend at instant speed or grow your Descend at instant. Like, this has secret text, 4 mana, sacrifice this creature. Just hilarious. Or if your opponent blocked with a 1/1, then it has 2 mana, sacrifice this creature. All right, up next, the first of our blue craft card. All 3 blue craft cards are nutty. All right, this is 2 mana. You draw 1.25 cards. You draw a card and you mill a card. Milling is relevant in this set. It's good for crafting and is good for just Descend in general, triggering Descend, lowering your Dissension. And then it's a 6 mana, 6/6 that taps or untaps a creature every attack, including itself. Like, the flip side of this is very good. It is trivially easy to craft it with an artifact. I think it's going to be difficult to not have artifacts in your graveyard or in play as a result of treasures or map tokens with the inverted iceberg, but just having an artifact that replaces itself early in the game to feed all of your artifact strategies is very good. Like, this works with artifacts, this works with all Descends in graveyards, this works with pirates, and it doesn't work great with Green Blue Explorer, but you're still going to play it because it's a cantrip that turns into a relevant body. Very good. So yes, I gave it a 6 with a floor of a 6. It's almost always going to play at that floor of a 6. If you can make this artifact and the mill relevant, it's a 7. It's going to happen a reasonable amount of time, so low effort. Up next, our next craft card is also a doozy. So it's got Flash, which means that you can trigger your things that care about artifacts coming in at its speed and stun a creature to take it out of combat for a few turns. You can also stun artifacts, which is occasionally relevant. You will find yourself stunning a map token every while, which is just hilarious. Like, you can stun maps or treasures. It's so good. So I gave it a 7 with a floor of 6 and a ceiling of 8. The ceiling is a little bit higher. Compared to the other one, you will often play this on turn 2, tap down your opponent's 2-drop, and then craft it on turn 3. More likely you'll craft it on turn 4 so you can explore in the same turn. But exploring every turn is very, very powerful in this. Exploring is really good. Like, just growing your creature or filtering, like surveilling. If this were a 5 mana artifact that let's get rid of this lodestone needle. If this were a 5 mana artifact that said 1 tap, surveil, put a +1/+1 counter on a target creature, you'd still play this. I think you really would. The fact that it's only sorcery speed hurts a little, but like, you will always be able to enable this, because like, if you activate this 3 times on average, it will draw you a land. And so as the game goes on, you will have enough lands to play the compass. You will not very often have to decide between the compass and your regular gameplay. It's just very powerful. I like this one a lot. I think the craft cards are so cool. The front half is almost playable on its own, even if without the craft. So this best blue uncommon, 1 sec. This is my highest rated blue uncommon. It doesn't have the highest ceiling. It does have the highest ceiling in commons, yes. All right, up next we have Marauding Brinefang. So this is the island cycling component. Board 3 is nice, island cycling is nice. 7 mana, 6/7 is okay. I gave it a floor of a 4. The whole cycle of land cyclers in this set are great. Better than usual because of Descent and Reanimation. I got yes. All right, Merfolk Cave Diver. I need to drop this score to a 4 because it is harder. I've reevaluated the number of Explore cards. The reason that I gave it a 5 initially is I was looking at this card, Guidestone Compass. If you have a Guidestone Compass, you'll be very happy to have a Cave Diver, Without the Guidestone Compass, it's still fine. A 3-mana 2/4 body is pretty good in this format. Like, it's not amazing, but it's solid. And the ability to occasionally just attack in for 3 is pretty good. There is enough ways to explore that this card is solid, but it replaces the cards you have that explore. If you didn't get to play with Ixalan much, Explore is good. Like, it doesn't seem like it should be a whole card as often as it is, but like, it always gets you closer to what you need to be doing with your draft deck. And this is a good payoff for it. So that ceiling of 6, that's if you have a whole bunch of Explore cards. If you only have a few, it's gonna play like a 3 or a 4. All right, Oaken Siren. I love this card. 2 mana, 1, like, flying is better in this set than we've seen be in the past. We see this kind of blue dork a lot, and it's usually pretty average. Cards like a 2 mana 1/3 that you can make a blue play instants or sorceries, or a 2 mana 1/3 that you can use to foretell a card. This one is an artifact, and it is a pirate. Those are both relevant typings. The vigilance is relevant, and you get to represent mana for artifacts on your opponent's turn, which you don't usually get to do with this kind of effect. Yeah, we are a ways off of Stormcrow now, Beard Broken. But yes, this card is great. Blue makes map tokens and grows it really well. If you can get this up to a 2/3 vigilance, it survives a bunch of things on top of being a dork. This is going to be like, so this is a very, very strong common in blue-white. It's only kind of playable everywhere else. Like, it's just okay everywhere else. But it's strong enough with just other artifacts that I'm pretty happy to play it and just support it within the color blue. It also, like, if you have a deck with a big pile of Oaken Sirens, you can play a turn 2 Oaken Siren and then play 2 of them on turn 3. You do want to look for things. The reason that I gave this card a 4 instead of like a 3 is that so many of the cards that you want to cast with it, you are already playing. Like, you don't put artifacts into your deck because you have Oaken Siren. You put Oaken Siren into your deck because you already have these strong artifacts. We just do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 4s in a row, all with different surrounding numbers. But Orazka Puzzle Door, solid card. Think of it like sleight of hand. Lowering the floor. Crazy. Nah, that's fine. Like, it replaces itself. It's fine. It's nice as a cantrip that triggers Descendant instant speed. That is an artifact, so it doesn't go into every deck. When you want it, you'll probably know. But if you have to play it as filler, you won't be too upset. Putting 2 permanents into your graveyard off 1 card is pretty nice, and the threat of it at instant speed is also pretty nice, and having it be an artifact that hangs out in play until you do either of those things is pretty nice. So I do like the card. I'll probably end up lowering the difficulty, but I'm pretty happy with the scores for now. I gave it a 4, floor of 3, ceiling of 6. Ceiling should probably be... There's only ever going to be a replacement for itself, and you have to get rid of it to draw the card. Think of it. All right, up next we've got Out of Air. Very solid counter spell. So it's Essence Scatter, blue counter target creature spell. Or 4 mana counter target spell. The option is really nice. When you need to counter any spell, it's going to be because it's something big like a sweeper or a bomb or a key removal spell. You won't mind so much paying 4 mana for it. It's really just that it's an instant. Being an instant is a liability. But blue, exactly. I was just about to say that, Ranger. Blue is a lot more than blue 1. Like, you have to be a base blue deck to be happy playing Out of Air. But if you open something powerful, if you have a reason to be really heavy blue, then take every single one you see. Be an Out of Air deck. Just suffocate your opponents and then cast Out of Air. I like it. It is a blue control card. It would actually, if it were 1 blue 3, this would be a 6. Crazy how much that of a difference blue is. Solid card though, efficient. Treat it like you would other removal spells that are just okay. Be ready to side it in against bombs too. As well as good against bombs. All right, Pirate Hat. Love this card. Great in the pirate deck, bad everywhere else. Like, one thing that we don't get to talk about enough in Magic, 1 mana is not 1 less than 2 mana. The difference between 1 and 2 is not 1 mana. It's not linear. How did I used to say this? It is 2 mana is more than twice as much as 1 mana in Magic. Being able to equip your pirate for 1 mana makes this card very strong. Looting is good in this format because when you're exploring, you are generating a lot of lands. A lot of lands are going into your hand. Turning those lands into relevant cards is where the card Pirate Hat comes in. I'm going to actually raise the ceiling and the difficulty on this card because you want Explore, you want Pirates, and then it's very good. And the ability to occasionally throw it onto a non-pirate is nice. But yeah, I think this card is great in the pirate deck, fine everywhere else. It may come up if you are, like, the thing is, if you're in the pirate deck, you're happy to have this. And if it's playable everywhere else. Shit, it's playable everywhere else. Like, that's what I'm realizing is, this says trigger descend when you attack. This says turn your explored cards into real cards. This says grow every pirate for free and enable everything. I think this might be like actually great, but with diminishing returns. Huh. Bumping this up again? I'm just thinking about where I'm actually taking this. Like, I'll take the first copy at a 5, but you can't run that many? But blue needs ways to grow it. At the very least, this is getting a revisit. I think I was just wrong. I don't think this is a 3 at all. This might be great. Shit. Shoot. No cursing. Yeah, exactly. See, that's what I was just thinking, Beard, but then I'm like, would I be upset with 3 pirate hats? Would you be upset giving a creature +3/+3 and looting 3 times? At which point is paying 1 mana to loot bad? It's when your opponent kills the thing, but so many of the things trigger on attack or only trigger on a tapped creature that you'll also get to draw the card first. Huh. But like, so the blue decks are blue-red pirates. It's great in blue-red pirates. That's pretty obvious. Blue-green explore is great in blue-green explore because when you explore, you will have a lot of extra lands. Blue-white artifacts is not the best artifact, but you're pretty happy to have it. And white has so many cheap flyers, which yesterday we talked about not having enough ways to grow your cheap white flyers. And then blue-black cares about reanimating and descending. This is a 5. Every deck wants this card. I can't even remember the last time I talked myself up 2 letter grades without just completely missing something. You do have diminishing returns on this, but I think I'm taking this card really high. There are not enough mana sinks in the format. There's 1-ish per color, maybe 2. Sorry, I don't like changing that many things once we're streaming, unless it's someone saying, hey, you read this card wrong. But yeah, hopefully I don't talk myself up or down 2 letter grades or 2 number grades anymore. Up next, we have Relic's Roar. The problem with Relic's Roar is it ends up being plan B for everything. If this made a 3/4, it would be better. 4/3 doesn't save your creature from very many combats or removal spells. Which makes this not an efficient trick. You can turn your opponent's 6/6 into a 4/3 so that it trades with your 3/2, and that's pretty nice. But like, this isn't a good card to discover or cascade into. It is an instant, so it doesn't feed descend. It doesn't do most of what you want to do. The reason I gave this as a 3 is that your deck will often have to have cards that you don't want them to do what they're doing. And if you spend a lot of time picking up a lot of ways to generate card advantage and draw cards, then you might be okay with spending 1 mana with using your mana efficiently instead of using your cards efficiently. So don't take it too high. But if things are really falling apart in your draft, then start picking up the Relics Roars, and it'll do a good job. Like it's a good plan B. Even just turning your random equipment into a 4/3 so that I can attack is solid. So the reason I like Relics Roar when things are going badly is being able to turn your map or treasure into a body to surprise block. Like if this said sacrifice a treasure, deal 4 damage to target attacking creature, you'd be a little happier with. So it's not unplayable, it's just weird and doesn't play into most of your gameplay. Right, March. That's exactly right. Exactly. That's a really good way to define it, Beard. It is a way to keep doing impactful things late for not a lot of mana, but like it's not plan A. I gave it a plan B note. So like when things aren't going quite right, or when this does a bad job of everything, but if your deck is really missing something, grab it to do that bad job. Because that job needs to be done. You need to kill things that are cheap. You need to use your rectangles efficiently. You need to use your cards efficiently if you're drawing a bunch of them. You need to have early interaction. You need to have things to do at instant speed. This is not the card you want for any of those things, but it does them all. Oh. See, the Pirate Hat's so cheap that I don't even see it as a mana sink. Like equip to, like you want pirates to equip it to, but you don't need to have pirates to equip to. So we'll actually talk about a few. We're gonna look at a couple of the cards I was just thinking about shortly. River Herald Scout, just very efficient. Like your cheap explorers are really good in this format. Like this is either a 2-mana 2/3 surveil one or a 2-mana 1/2 draw card, and both of those are things you're very happy with in any given deck. So oh, this is the first one, huh? This is the first 0 effort card we've seen. It's better in Explore decks, but like you're always gonna take it. You're always gonna play it. It's just a fine blue common. Might be the best blue common, which is crazy, right? This is a 2-mana 1/2 surveil, but that's good enough. Stage of Days, really good way to dump 2 cards in for Descend and fix your draws. 3/2 is not a great body, but it's fine. It doesn't quite replace itself. Like it's not a 3-mana 3/2 draw card, but it's a 3-mana 3/2 that makes sure you draw something you want and puts 2 cards in your graveyard. That's exactly right, Thane. No notes. But yeah, solid card without being great. This is a Descend card. It is not worth, like, you might, yeah, like you don't take, you still want River Herald Scout for Descend over Sage of Days. Oh, that's true. This is a 1-card way to trigger Descend 4. That I didn't actually think of that thing. I forgot that you could it's a May on that 1 card. But very cool. This is purely Descend. You don't want it, like you want this in, if you have a lot of blue Descend cards or in blue black or in blue green, you want it a lot less elsewhere. You can also like put a land on top to make sure your Explorer draws you a card. Solid, not amazing. Happy to have it in a lot of the Descend decks. Should play pretty well. It just trades down a lot of the time. Yep. I missed that, Beard. Thane just pointed that out. Self-reflection. For some reason, this is the only flashback card in the set. You never want to cast this card. You want to loot this card away and flash it back, or mill it with one of your mill cards. It doesn't trigger Descend, but it's nice pulling value out of your graveyard. Solid card without being, like, it's playable, but it's work. You need a lot of looting or a lot of mill, but then it's pretty good. But like, you need both a way to put it into your graveyard and a creature that's worth copying for it to be good. Then it's good. But if you have that, grab it, but don't pick it early because it is not easy to make that happen for free. Shipwreck Sentry. Here's a card that is easy to make it happen. This is a card I went through and looked at all of the artifacts in the set for. It is best in blue-white, but so many of the blue decks, so like blue-white, blue-red, this is a trivially easy card to attack with on turn 3 and every turn after that. And in blue-green and blue, so in blue-black and blue-green, you're happy to play this card after drawing cards as a relevant blocker in addition to other cards, even if it only attacks a few times. We've seen versions of this card, a 2-mana 3/3 with Defender that can lose Defender a few times. This is one of the better ones we've seen. It's a very efficient 2-drop. 3 toughness and 3 power on your 2-drop is great. You need artifacts to go with it. I don't think it's that hard to get the artifacts to go with it in this set, even if it's just in blue. Artifacts are very good in this set. You know, we haven't talked about it much, but this might be the best job they've done on an artifact set in a long time. Like, there's nothing that makes all the other artifact sets busted in this set. Just pretty good. All right, up next we've got Sinuous Bentasaur. I needed to lower this one a little bit. So this is more work than I thought, just as a result of the lack of caves. I'm sorry, I just spoiled so many cards. So there's not enough caves for this card to be amazing. In the cave deck, it is. Like, if you want this to be a 6-mana 4/4, draw 2 cards, period. If this doesn't draw you 2 cards, you can't play it. However, you can splash it really easily. So if you are a cave deck, you play this card, period. You take it even if you aren't blue, and you just run it. It's pretty cool. If craft begs to differ with what, I'm sorry, I may have missed it. Yeah, like, it's a good card if you can draw 2 cards. But there's some work to do. The effort should be higher, but the ceiling is the same. If this is a 6-mana 4/4 dig you down to what you're looking for, you're gonna win the game. You'll be very happy to do it. I love Craft Beard. I think it's so good. You should be a little spooked by it. Song of Stupefaction, not the removal spell you want, but it is a removal spell that is a permanent that triggers your Descend. Just fine all around, nothing special. Bad removal, still removal. This is another contender for best blue uncommon. And it's so different from the other one, right? So the other contender for best blue uncommon is this Lodestone Needle. This big, complex, do the thing. And then I gave the same rating to this 1-mana 1/1 flyer, make a map. Like, Beard, they didn't change the mechanics. They changed every other card. Every other card in the game now produces more value. That's why the adventures work. That's why the crafting works. Because of cards like the Spyglass Siren, which is a 1-mana 1/1 flyer that is worth 2 rectangles. This flyer makes a rectangle when it comes in. Like, it's a 1-mana 1/1 that lets you surveil when you need it. So yesterday, I know I was wrong about what the card said, but we had a white card that I thought was a 1-mana 1/1 Explore. But it explores when it dies. And I said, well, an Explore on turn 1 is less useful because you don't know what you need yet. Scrying on turn 1 is not as good as scrying on turn 10. Because when you scry on turn 1, maybe there's a land on top, maybe there's a body, but you don't know what you need yet. If you know what you need, something's wrong. You are missing a color. You are missing a 2-drop. But chances, you don't want to know what you need on turn 1. So this puts a delayed Explore out on a 1/1 flyer in a set that greatly values 1/1 flyers and growing things. In the Pirates deck, it is a creature, it is a pirate and an artifact. In the artifact deck, it is a flyer and an artifact deck. In the Explore deck, it explores. In the Descent deck, it surveils 1. Card's just fantastic. In every blue deck, it is a reason to be blue. That floor of a 5 is when you draw it off the top in the late game and have to just make your 2-mana 2/2 flyer that surveils 1. Just really like this card. It is one of the best blue uncommons in this set. You cannot use a non-rectangle to represent a token, Ben. You can, but I'll yell at you. I really like that comparison, March. This is blue Thraben Inspector. That's really accurate. And like, yes, you can blink it. You can pick it up. It does everything. There's a 1-mana 1/1 that does everything. It's a lot like the Fairy Dream Thief in the last set that surveilled when it came into play, but that surveils on a delay, and I really like that. It's a great card that does everything. It's not a human like that Thraben Inspector is, but it's still good. And I mean, 2 rectangles for your 1 mana card on a relevant flyer. There's just so many good ways to suit up a flyer in this set. All right, up next we have Staunch Crewmate. If you build your deck right, this is a 2 mana 2/1 draw card. If you don't, it's a 2 mana 2/1 that doesn't draw a card, and you're very upset about it. So you're blowing the floor. But it's usually going to play a little closer to that ceiling of a 6. It's just like this is a blue-red or a blue-white card because it's artifact or pirate. So you got to build around the crewmate a little bit. But if you can make this a 2 mana 2/1 draw card, you'll win the game pretty reliably. Pirates are great in this, Ben. And what is this emote? I need this. This is a global emote. Never seen this emote before. I played so many pirates. Why does my pirate look different from your pirate? Yeah, Staunch Crewmate. I love this card. I love this this mentality, this moment, the flavor of this card. Leave you not a chance. You still owe me money. Like, what a pirate. What a perfect snapshot of what the pirates are in this set. Love it. All right. Up next, Unlucky Drop. Bad removal, still removal. You don't need to play it. Is another misleading motes. Hitting artifacts is nice. Being an instant speed is nice. Being an instant is not nice. Just fine. You'll take it when you need removal. I gave it a 3. Floor is a 3. Ceiling's a 4. Normal card. Oh, thank you, Ben. Really appreciate it. Up next, Waterlogged Hulk. Card's just really good. The one mana artifact with tap mill a card is good enough in a lot of these colors. It's good in the artifact deck. It's good in green and blue black. If you build your deck right, it's pretty much always going to trigger Descent. And crafting with an island from your graveyard, like if you play this on turn 1, it is very likely that you can craft this on turn 4. You activate it 4 times, then turn it into a 4/4. Descend 8 is nice, but not really necessary. Crew 1 on your 4/4 is pretty good. This is a good card on turn 1 for enabling your Descend and your artifact synergies. This is a good card on turn 5 for being a 5 mana 4/4 unblockable with Vigilance. This is a good card in the mid game because you can play it and then craft a little later. You don't want to have to sacrifice your land, but you very rarely will, because when you're looting, you are likely to be discarding lands, and when you are milling, you are likely to be discarding lands. You do have to be base blue, but that's negligible. They get pretty high in the Descend deck. So if you are an active Descend deck, if you are trying to hit Descend 4 as fast as possible, take it as a 7. Otherwise, take it closer to a 4 or a 5 and still be pretty happy with it. Like, this card is playable as the only mill enabler or Descend payoff in your deck. It can be the only one of both of those things, and you'll play it. It's obviously not as good, but that's just to illustrate why the floor of a 4 is here. Ceiling is a 7, and the rating is a 5, and the effort is a little high. It's an Ancient Gondola. It's a vehicle gondola. I love the idea that the crew, so like Descend 8 can't be blocked as long as there are 8 or more permanents in your graveyard. That's because you don't actually go down with it. The crew person, they're just operating the control panel and sending the gondola down the wire. Up next, Waterwind Scout, very similar to the Spyglass Siren, but it is harder to use the map right away. Like Windrake with a lot of upside, a 3 mana 2/2, a 4 mana 3/3, or a 4 mana 2/2 draw a card, all great. Give it a 4 or 5, ceiling is 7, it's going to average out to 6. Just a really good card. It has fewer, it is not a pirate, so it's a less relevant type. But Windrake is actually playable in this set. Windrake with upside is very good. This is one of the best blue commons because exploring is strong. Good card. Waylaying Pirates. Only actually good in the Pirates deck, where it's pretty good. The thing is, not all of it's only in the Pirates deck that you want to be attacking enough to make this stun powerful, but that is very good. Clearing out a blocker in the Pirates deck is great with that ceiling of a 5. If you're not an active Pirate deck, making treasures and artifacts, the card's not great. All right, I like that. On the flavor of this, they need a rope. Like, They don't always have a rope or something to tie you to. And if they do, they're not even going to kill you. They just tie you up for a bit and then leave. All right, up next, the last card for tonight, Zoetic Glyph, and it's a doozy. Really cool card. So this is a 3 mana 5/4 if you build your deck right, and it essentially draws a card when it dies. Imagine, like, there's even the potential that this will die into another Zoetic Glyph. Like, your opponent will be like, I'm gonna kill your treasure, and you can be like, I'm gonna sacrifice my treasure, and Zoetic Glyph is going to discover a Zoetic Glyph to block in this combat. Solid, efficient card in general. Like, a 3 mana 5/4 that draws a card on death is amazing. Like, that is a fantastic card. And there's some work required to get this to be a 3 mana 5/4 that draws a card on death. And yes, it can't draw a 4 mana card, but it will always draw something you can cast. Very just good card all around. I like it a lot. All right, so that is going to do it for tonight. Did we answer all of our blue questions? Where is your card advantage coming from? Which game stage will you be trying to get your card advantage during? How are you using your evasive creatures? How are you using your rectangles? And what are you digging for? I'm going to be doing this for all the colors because it really helps frame things. How about the black question? Black questions we had were, do I need to sacrifice cards to make my cards better? What am I sacrificing if I do? How do I turn my costs into benefits? What gets better when I play it again? How am I using my graveyard? I think we did. I think that went really well. I like this formatting. We're going to keep using tomorrow, if you are free. Tomorrow we are going to be covering at 7 p.m. the red cards and the green cards, as well as the artifacts. I want to do the artifacts last because they make the artifacts in this set. They did a really good job. Like, there's no artifacts that are like, this card is just nuts, I need to pick it no matter what. They are all situational fillers to your game plan. Just brilliant. Set plays really well. It's not like the power level is high on like the vanilla scale. Things are statted a little bit better, and the removal is better across the board. But like, my first glance at this set was, this set is nuts. What were they thinking? But upon reviewing all the cards in relation to each other, feels really good. Like, it feels like everything plays really well. I think upping all the removal was a really good decision. And you'll see the big creatures tomorrow. So tomorrow we'll go over the red cards, the green cards, and the artifacts. I'm starting right at 7 p.m. I will be here at 7 p.m. We'll chat for a few minutes, and then we'll get started as quickly as we can, because that took almost exactly 2 hours, and we're adding the artifacts in.